That means I left the body. That means I am not the body. I am the self. That is our understanding. The whole culture of India, even to the most ordinary person, brings this knowledge that we are essentially the self and we have a body, just like an old cloth, we throw it away. Sharir chhod diya. In the West it is different. They have been taught body is everything. So when you die, the language used in English is he kicked off his soul. He kicked away soul. Body has kicked away the soul. That is common practice, way of saying also. That's why they preserve the body. We don't preserve the body. Body is finished. We burn it away. The sooner the better. All others preserve the body, even put all sorts of good things there. In Egyptian religion you will find all the things needed by that person will be put into the grave, including servants, women, everything is put in by killing them. All the custom prevails wherever the body consciousness becomes central. But wherever the other idea comes, I am the self, I have the body, then we get into the body. Nothing more is there. Its work is over. There's no life in it. So we burn it away. Pasmantam shariram, as the sage in the Isha Upanishad said, let this body, which has been a good chemical laboratory for my life's purpose, now it has become old and useless, let it be reduced to ashes. Let its components go back to their own elements, chemical elements, is the language used in that Isha Upanishad. So this example is very famous. Anybody can understand. In the later chapters, about 15 and 16, that chapter, Krishna will say, Utkramantam sthitam vapi bhunjanam va gunanvitam vimodhananu pashyanti jnana chakshusha. Two types of people, vimodha, foolish, and short-sighted, sensorily limited. That's called vimodha there. The other is jnana chakshusha. Those who have the eye of jnana, the eye of wisdom. They see things differently. What is that? When you are living in the body, when you are experiencing various delights of the body, or when you finally leave the body, that there is something as the subject passing through all the changes of the objects here. That knowledge is known only to the jnana chakshusha, man of subtle vision, not the ordinary people. He cannot see that out. Even now, within the body, there is the self. Then, when we die, the self remains. The body goes. Utkramantam means going out of the body. Sthitam vapi, when he is functioning in the body. Bhunjanam va gunanvitam. With sattva rajastamas, he is experiencing the world around. This self, ever present like this, vimodhananu pashyanti. The foolish person never understands this truth. Pashyanti jnana chakshusha. The jnana chakshu, those who have, they understand. Even now, the Atman is there, within this body-mind complex, experiencing various delights, or passing through sorrow, etc., and finally quitting this body, finding it absolutely useless for his purpose. So an old cloth, when we find it is useless, we just throw it away, without any shedding a tear. Put on a new cloth. The body, you get new, then you start your life once again. This is a central teaching only in this wonderful land of ours. From here it has spread to various countries, Jainism, Buddhism, Hinduism. They all believe in this. And most of the mystics of other religions in earlier periods, they also died this idea. And today, this idea is spreading like a wildfire all over the Western world, only because the alternative to this idea is the concept of the devil. All the evil in the world comes from the devil. And people don't like this devil. Devil should not be devil religion anymore. So they want to banish devil. When you banish the devil, you want some substitute. That is the substitute. Karma and rebirth. These together constitute the real substitute to that most unscientific notion of the devil in Western religious thought. That is going away. This idea is spreading all over as more reasonable, though it is not demonstrable, but it is more reasonable in that point of view. But to the sages of India, it is a demonstrable thing. I am not part of the body. Ramakrishna's example is so beautiful in this connection. Coconuts belong to two categories, green coconut and ripe coconut. In green coconut, the kernel is attached to the shell. If you scoop the kernel, a little shell also comes along with it. That is our ordinary state of mind. We are attached to the body. Anything connecting with the body will affect the self, and what affects the self affects the body. We are so connected together. But take the ripe coconut. We just make a sound, kada kada sound, you will find. It is not touching the shell at all. It is completely detached from the shell. That state is the state of spiritual realization. I am not the body, I am the eternal self. So this is a profound truth. In the West, one person in all history has realized this truth. And that has come into literature. And that person was Socrates. And Plato describes Socrates facing death. Generally, without a sense of courage, we can't face death with equanimity. We are frightened, we are depressed, etc., etc. In the case of Socrates, he had such a calm and peaceful mind, an absolute fearlessness, because of this deep knowledge that I am not the body, I am the self. This thought is expressed by Plato in his dialogues, where when he is taking the poison, all these young disciples are sitting around him. He is the only calm person in that audience. All the rest were disturbed, speechless. In fact, they started even weeping. Then Socrates chided them. I asked the ladies to go away because they were crying a lot. It was not giving me the peace that I need at this time of death. But you people also are crying. What are you doing like this? That is the nature of the chiding that he gave to the people around. They were all young as well as old. Then one of them turned to Socrates and asked a question. Socrates, his name was Crito, a very important personality, quite senior in age. Crito asked him, Socrates, how shall we bury you? Man is not dead yet. He is taking the poison. After a few minutes, poison will act and he will die. But he is asking this question already. Socrates, how shall we bury you? This question is greeted by Socrates with a gentle smile, saying, Crito, you must first catch me, the real me, before you ask this question. See the language. Pure Vedanta, you will find every word of that. You must first catch me, the real me, before you ask that question. But be of good cheer, Crito. You refer to this body. As to the body, do with it what you do with other people. That's the language. There you can see this particular knowledge gives absolute peace of mind, great composure, great courage, and the power to pacify people around also. Therefore, it is not a theory, it is an experience. But in the whole of Western history, it's only one such person who has been mentioned in literature, and that one person could not be understood by the people around, Athenians around, because their philosophy had no understanding of this dimension. Though the Oracle of Delphi had told the Greeks, man, know thyself, they knew man only from the external point of view, eating, drinking, pleasure, comfort, and then imperialism, war, all that they knew. They were very gifted in all these fields. The only one who knew this truth was Socrates, and therefore the Greeks could not understand this man, and they brought a charge against him. Remember this, such a great soul being charged in the court by the Athenian state as one who misleads the youth of Athens, and he deserves death by drinking hemlock or poison. What a tragic situation. The finest citizen has become the object of judgment by the people, because they couldn't understand this dimension. Everything else they could understand. I used to tell people in Greece or Europe or America, Suppose Socrates were in India, what would have been the reaction? They would have understood him. Every word of Socrates we would have understood. We won't have made him to die. We will never do so, because we know this dimension. But a Greek culture never understood this dimension. And anybody who teaches people things beyond their understanding is liable to be persecuted or killed. Same thing happened to Jesus. He spoke something they couldn't understand. They couldn't appreciate. And he was charged as an agent of a devil. And he was crucified also. So I remember the famous remark of Bertrand Russell. He says, if you teach people faster than they can learn, you will be in for trouble for yourself. That is the idea. So Socrates taught something which they could not understand. Plato understood. A few others understood. That's why he says, what is this wonderful Athenian state? It has killed the most beautiful man in our whole society. They couldn't understand him. So the mobs of Athens, democratic Athens, killed Socrates. And that made Plato hate democracy. Absolutely mobocracy as we call it. No discrimination, no capacity to see deeper. We have all the challenge before us even in India today. We have a democracy. Beautiful. If our people hold fast to these eternal teachings and develop that great attitude of tolerance and understanding, our democracy can become true democracy. If it doesn't, if we don't have good education, good cultural development, we can convert our democracy into the worst type of mobocracy. Even now there are tendencies in our politics, absolute mobocracy. Just like the mobs going to the airport, anybody passing up and down, breaking all the rules and regulations, everything. That is called mobocracy. But all this will change when a little bit of this discipline will come to our people, and it is my hope that it is going to be. There are great teachers who taught us this democracy. For example, Vivekananda. He said this whole country must be based on democracy. We have been too undemocratic, too feudal. We have to break away from it, wipe out the blot of it, make a true democracy. That will come when education and culture go to the people. Not only education. Education can make us crude. And today I see a lot of young educated people crude in their behavior. But with culture, education will become a redeeming factor. So these ideas are not mere opinions or dogmas or anything. They are truths. They have been rediscovered by sages. I said in my lecture in the West that this section of Plato's dialogues can be exactly a chapter in any Upanishads. As for that, the famous British writer of a famous book, The Message of Plato, he has said, you can never understand Plato and Socrates without studying the Upanishads. It is the Upanishadic ideas that you find plenty in these two masterminds, and in his book he gives various illustrations as well. So these verses dealing with the mortal nature of man, they are going to be tremendous attraction to the modern age. People in all parts of the world. We know only one part of life, that is life. We don't know other part of that, that's called death. Death and life are two aspects of the same reality. There is an ancient teaching in the Rig Veda. Yasya chaya amritam, yasya mrityuhu. That is the Rig Vedic utterance. That reality whose chaya is one life, the other death. Both are the chayas of that one reality, shadows of that one reality. So if you want to understand reality, you must understand life and death, not merely life. The Greeks understood only life. In Lowes Dickinson, a great scholar, writing on the life of Greece, mentions there, the Greeks understood life. They could never reconcile with death. When they were to die, they were snatched by some power. They didn't like it at all. That is the way in which he puts this idea. But with one exception, I said, that is Socrates. he understood the meaning of life and death. In today's civilization, same situation obtains. We know life, we don't know the meaning of death. But that is coming. Death of the body is not death of the soul. Man is mortal. When these two are put together, fear of death will become less and less. And our nation particularly needs this teaching more and more. We are so afraid of death in all these centuries. In fact, in my house, if I ever mention the word death, no, don't talk death at all. Never mention that word. They used to tell me, and I will repeat it again and again. So that this fear of death, what happens to you then? You die even before you really die. That's the meaning of cowardice. The cowards die many times in their life, but a valiant taste of death but once, said Shakespeare. That is literally true. A nation which fears death cannot be great. Only if you can face death, you will become great. That lesson Swamiji taught us in this modern period. So, this shloka says there, Vasamsi jirnani yatha vihaya, tatha sharir, navani grinhati naroparani, tatha sharirani vihaya jirnani, anyani samyati navani dehi. This is what we do every day. And the soul does it at the time of death. This cloth is old, this body is old, let me get a new one. But there are occasions when you throw away even a good cloth. That's why when the body is young also, we have to face death very often. When I was young, I used to see my mother every day wearing only newly washed cloth, given to the washerman, every day new. And I used to tell mother, what is this? Your cloth is still clean, why do you change it? You don't know. You don't wear the same cloth twice, you will say. I couldn't understand. So, even though the body is young, sometimes you have to face death and get another body. But normally, we discard a cloth when it is torn and old, then get a new one. Similarly, a body which has become useless for our purpose, death comes at that time. Majority of people die only when they are old and decrepit, not when they are young. Their number is much less in percentage wise. Then, Nainam chindanti shastrani, Nainam dahati pavakaha, na chainam kledayantyaapo, na shoshayati mairutah. This is also another expression of the same truth. This self, the Atman, no weapons can cut it. Nainam chindanti shastrani, Nainam dahati pavakaha. Fire cannot burn it. Wonderful idea. And then water cannot wet it. Na chayanam kledayanti apo, na shoshayati mairutah. And wind cannot dry it. That's the nature of the Atman. So, take mind, for example. You can't cut your mind, you can't wound your mind, you can't do any such thing. Though, as a self, as an ego, I may felt wounded. But the mind has no wound at all. We associate ourselves with these kind of limitations of the body, and we say we are also wounded. But nobody can cut even the mind. It is so subtle. It's not a material thing. Still more subtle is the Atman. Naturally, no fire can burn it, no water can wet it, etc. Then he positively says, Avyaktoyam, Achedyoyam, Adafyoyam, Akledyo, Ashoshevacha, Nityas Sarvagatasthanahu, Achalavayam, Sanatanaha. This self cannot be cut, nor can it be burnt, nor wetted, nor dried. Changeless, all-pervading, unmoving, immovable, this self is eternal. That is a repetition of the same idea. Again and again, the truth is pressed upon us. We are not this body-mind complex. Within this, there is something profound. This is like a gem box. Box looks very beautiful, but the gem inside is more valuable. Don't forget that. That idea is repeated again and again, even in our mystical literature. The holy name of God is like a gem. Ram, he says, Ratan Maine Payo, that famous Hindi song. I have received the gem of Rama's name. It is immortal, by which all fear vanishes, etc., etc. So we have been taught this again and again by great mystics and spiritual teachers. Gita is expressing it here in these verses. Avyaktoyam, achintyoyam, avikaryoyam uchyate, tasmadevam viditvainam, nana shojitum arhasi. This Atman is said to be unmanifested. You can't feel the touch of the Atman anywhere. It is unmanifested. Avyakta means unmanifested. Similarly, unthinkable. Okay? You cannot catch it with a piece of thought. You cannot conceptualize it. Everything in the world we try to catch through two sources. One is thought, the other is speech. Once you give a speech and a thought to enclose something, you say you understand that thing. You can do with all the word this kind of constricting a thing through speech and thought. But with regard to the Atman, speech and thought come away, unable to touch it. That is why unthinkable, beyond all concepts, is the Atman. In fact, Shankara's commentary says, even the word Atman, even the concept Atman, doesn't touch this Atman. That is the language he has used. We have to use some word, so we use the word Atman. But don't run away. Atman is a thing. It is not a thing. It is the eternal consciousness behind all things. That is stressed again and again. So, avyaktoyam, achintyoyam, achintya. One beautiful verse. You can see the depth of psychological insight contained in that verse. In 5.Bhagvadgeeta, the great book of 5.Bhagvadgeeta, highest Advaita is taught there. There the sage says, Achintyam chintyamanopi chintarupam bhajatyasau. When you think of the unthinkable, you resort yourself to a piece of thought only. When you think of the unthinkable, you don't catch that unthinkable at all. You formulate a thought. That's all. It's an object. Thought is an object. This is the unthinkable self, eternal self. Now, this kind of subtle knowledge of these deep realities you get in Taoist philosophy, Zen philosophy, in all these Eastern philosophies, and some of the mystical writings of Christian and Muslim saints, not in the official religions. Formal religions, nowhere you will get in any part of the world this kind of profound thinking. Achintyam chintyamano vai chintarupam bhajatyasau. Think of the unthinkable. What do you get? You get a piece of thought. Just a concept, nothing else. And this is beyond all conceptualization. That's the Atman, eternal self, the subject, the seer, and not an object. Similarly, he said, Achintyoyam, avikaryoyam. It is unchangeable. The whole world is changeable here. This is unchangeable. The external world is simply a tissue of change, constant change. In fact, when you go to particle physics, you find the life of a particle is a fraction of a second. It comes and goes. Just that's why they have got such measurement of time. Even fractions of second, millionth fraction of a second we have when you deal with subatomic particles. So, this Atman never changes, eternally the same. That is one truth that the world is seeking. What is that eternal, changeless reality? Formerly we used the word God for it, but God became involved in so many controversies, and ultimately people said we don't want God. In fact, it was the German philosopher Nietzsche in the last century who said God is dead. From that time he said God is dead. Because that kind of God has no status at all. But the Vedantic God is quite different. It is the eternal self. It is always the witness of every event. Every yes and no is watched by the eternal self. Therefore, this has got a strong foundation in experience in your own self. What happened in the case of Ramana Maharshi when he was a boy of 16 or 17, the first and last experience of his, when he felt I am going to die, then he became frightened, came home, lay down on his room on the floor. Then he said, yes, I am dying, I am dying. And he imitated the whole idea of death. yes, I am just dying, I am dead, even that experience. Then he found, but I am there to watch it. I am deathless. The one who watches my death, I am always there. That is my true self. That was his last and first and last spiritual experience. Got into his own words. Of course, he got it so easily because he had high spiritual development earlier and good vasanas and samskaras. We may not get it so easy. But even if you get a glimpse of the truth, yes, there is some truth in it. I can work on it. That much is enough for us to begin with. So, tasmad avikaryo yamuchyate. Tasmad evam viditvayanam. Knowing him to be like this, na anushojitum arhati. It is not fit for you to experience grief and sorrow, etc. It has absolutely no meaning. Atachayanam, then he changes his argument a little differently. Atachayanam nityajatam nityam va manyase mritam tathabitvam mahabaho nainam shojitum arhasi. Even if you think otherwise, that this self has constant birth and constant death. If you think that way, like any materialist will think so, even then you should not mourn for this, because it is bound to die, it is bound to be born. What's the use of worrying? That kind of argument comes here, which is, next sentence clarifies it. Yatasya hi dhruvo mrityuho. Dhruvam janma mritasya cha. Tasmat apariharyarthe natvam shojitum arhasi. Whoever is born will have to die. Yatasya hi dhruvo mrityu. Dhruva means unalterable, permanent. Anybody who is born must die. Yatasya hi dhruvo mrityuhu. One British poet, slightly pessimistic as it is called, I suppose, that elegy in the churchyard, the famous poem. They will say, our hearts are beating funeral marches to the grave. You start heart beating as a baby. What is heart doing? Funeral marches to the grave. That is one way of expressing that idea. Our hearts are beating, but you are always going closer and closer to the grave thereby. That is one way of putting that. If you have life, you have also death. If you have death, you have also a birth later on. Yatasya hi dhruva mrityu. Dhruvam janma mritasya cha. Therefore, tasmad apariharyarthe. This is inescapable situation. Apariharya, inescapable. Natvam shojitum arhasi. It doesn't behove you to experience sorrow and grief. He said. Then a very profound idea comes here. Avyaktadini bhutani vyaktamadhyani bharata avyakta nidhananyeva tasyaka paridevana. All beings are avyakta in the beginning, vyakta in the middle, avyakta again in the end. That is a very famous utterance. Avyaktadini bhutani. Now a baby is born. Where was he before? He was nowhere, unmanifested, intangible. But now it has become a baby. Avyaktadini bhutani. Vyakta madhyani bharata. In the middle, it is vyakta. You can see it, you can identify it, you can handle it. And again, avyakta nidhananyeva. Time of death, again it becomes avyakta. Tatraka paridevana. What is there to feel sorry or grief, experience grief in this matter? In the Mahabharata, there is a beautiful expression of the same truth. Adarshanat apatitaha. Punascha adarshanam gataha. We came from adarshana. We went back to adarshana. From the unseen, we came. Under the unseen, we went away. That is our experience. So why worry about the seen section? Why be excited that way? Let the truth be known. There is a past, there is a future. That is unknown, this is unknown. This is the known period. Let us do as well as we can, but not forgetting this truth of the avyakta of the past, avyakta of the future. Avyaktadini bhutani, vyakta madhyani bharata, avyakta nidhananyeva, tasyaka paridevana. So, this very difficult subject is a profound truth. Extreme subtlety of thinking is needed to comprehend even a little bit of it. That is expressed in the next verse, verse 29. Ascharyavat pashyati kaschidenam, ascharyavat vadati tathaiva cha anyah, ascharyavat chainam anya shrunoti, shrutvapienam vedana chaiva kaschit. Some speak of this truth as an ascharya, the wonder. What a wonderful truth it is. How mysterious, we say. Ascharyavat pashyati kaschidenam. Similarly, ascharyavat vadati tathaiva cha anyah. Others speak of it as a wonder. And a few others, ascharyavat chainam anya shrunoti. Others hear about it as a wonder. The wonderful thing I have heard. Shrutvapienam vedana chaiva kaschit. And in spite of hearing it all or knowing like this, you don't really understand its true nature at all. It ever remains a mystery. The mysterium tremendum, as they call it in Latin language, a tremendous mystery is this Atman. It is there, but he doesn't allow you to detect him all the time. That is a hidden truth. In fact, one of the British poets of the last century, Browning, Robert Browning, very much influenced by Vedantic ideas, he has written a poem called Paracelsus. In that poem, he speaks of the imprisoned splendor. There's a profound splendor in every one of us, but imprisoned there. You can't find it out at all. You have to release that imprisoned splendor. That is spiritual life. So the term imprisoned splendor is a very beautiful idea. Esha sarvesha bhuteshu gudho. Kathopanishad said, this Atman is present in every being, but gudho, very, very mysterious. Na prakashate, not at all manifest. And avyakta, not vyakta. That's the truth. But we can realize it. We can release this splendor from that imprisonment. That's what we do in our spiritual life. Let us a little bring up that light to brighten our day-to-day life and dealings. A little spiritual light come into your life, your dealing with the next person will be quite different. All that hatred and violence, all that exploitation, all that will go. When a little light of the Atman will light up your day-to-day life and human relationship. So, this concept of the imprisoned splendor is a very beautiful concept. A British physicist wrote a book on modern physics and its philosophy with this very title, Imprisoned Splendor. He met me in Calcutta, he was my guest. When I went to Melbourne, he was also there. We met together there also. He was so much impressed by this teaching. He told me, I want to start an ashrama in Australia. The whole concept of ashrama must come to our countries. He really started an ashrama also. Of course, later on he passed away and I made inquiries. So I'm telling how these ideas travel. The Atman, Ascharyavat pashyati kaschidenam, Ascharyavat vadati tathaiva cha anyah, Ascharyavat chainam shrunoti, shrutvapienam vedana chaiva kaschit. It remains a mystery all through, but it can be cleared. It can be realized by appropriate methods. That is the Vedantic technique of spiritual life and spiritual realization. This is very much close to Rigveda in the 10th mandala, 6th chapter, 3rd section, verse 4. A similar statement you will find so early in Rigveda. In the Kathopanishad also, this idea comes there. The word Ascharya. Ascharyo vakta, kushalosya labdha, Ascharyo jnata, kushala anishashtaha. This Atman is so profound and so mysterious. The teacher of the Atman must be an Ascharya, a wonderful person. The student of the Atman must also be Ascharya. When these two come together, then realization will come. Ascharyo vakta, kushalosya labdha, Ascharyo jnata, kushala anishashtaha. That is how Kathopanishad referred to the same subject. So we stand before this great mystery in wonder, with worshipping it. What else can we do? We can only silently meditate upon it, worship it. We can't capture it by our mind, by our thought. That's the nature of this supreme truth, which is so close to us as ourselves, but so far away from us, from our understanding. It is close and it is far. Upanishad repeats this idea. It is very near you, it is far away from you. To the ignorant, it is far. To the knowing, it is near. That is our freedom. The whole center of human freedom is in that particular mystery. That is the center of freedom of man. When you realize it, you become truly free. Other freedoms are necessary. But this freedom is the freedom of all freedom. You may have all the wealth and power, but you may be absolutely unfree. But with this knowledge of your true nature, even though you may not have many material possessions, you will be really free in the true sense of the term. So that is how verse 29 has brought before us this tremendous mystery, this imprisoned splendor. And the challenge to you, to everyone, is how to release it from that prison. Let it come out. Let it manifest. So Vivekananda defines religion in one scientific sentence. Religion is the manifestation of the divinity already in man. It is hidden. Now let it manifest. Let it manifest. What a change will come in interhuman relations when a little of this divinity manifests in our life. That is the great teaching that is being expounded here. It's just the beginning. Throughout the 18 chapters, we shall be in the center of this great theme. And the whole world is the audience today for the Gita. Formerly only some people of India. Today the whole world craving to get a copy of the book. If anybody can send, like that Sofia from Bulgaria, the man wrote to me, we don't know anything. We have got one of the small books. Please send us some other books. We are hungry for these ideas. That is the situation in the world today. We shall meet next Sunday as usual and continue this particular section, the second chapter beginning. Last Sunday we were studying that verse which refers to the Atman as a marvel, Ascharya. That's a great verse coming first in the Kathopanishad and now in the Gita. The word Ascharya is used in that connection. Ascharyavat pashyati kaschidenam. Ascharyavat vadati tathaiva chanyah. Ascharyamev anya shrunoti shrutvaapyenam vedana chaiva kaschit. This is verse 29. Even in physical science, when you look at a small living cell, to the scientist it is a marvel of construction, a marvel of organic activity within itself, creating, destroying, shaping, multiplying. It is a marvel. Even in the science of physics, it is a marvel to see that a tiny piece of matter can contain enormous energy. That is nuclear science. Ascharyavat pashyati, you can say regarding that also. It is all a wonder. When you probe deep into nature, the wonder that you see outside becomes less. Greater wonders become revealed to you. Similarly, looking at man, that study has just started in the West. And they are also starting to marvel at this wonderful piece. Shakespeare has expressed it, how wonderful a thing is man, in a famous passage. This man can control this world. He can understand it. He can transcend it. But is there something in him which is such a marvel? Last week I referred to the term coined by Robert Browning, British poet, the imprisoned splendor. A wonderful splendor is somewhere imprisoned within the body of man. That's called Ascharya. Today when physics, modern science, in its psychology, neurology, etc., will probe deeper and deeper into man, this marvel will increase more and more. The study of the brain itself is a tremendous marvel. How the brain operates, how the various cells work together and then produce a coherent life and reaction to the world. All this is subjects of marvel. But the most marvelous is what the Upanishad is dealing with, the infinite Atman. Behind this body-mind complex, which is so tiny, which is so contracted an organism compared to the world outside, yet within that is something tremendous. That is the biggest challenge before modern thought. Indian thought faced it long, long ago. That's what you find expressed in these verses. Ascharyavat pashyati kaschidena. Ramakrishna used to say, Shiva, realizing his own infinite Shiva nature, couldn't control himself and started dancing. Generally you dance when you overflow in energy, then only you will dance. If you are weak in energy, you will never dance. An expansion of energy within makes you dance. Shiva's dance is the result of that. He himself is amazed at to see the Shiva nature within himself. He is Shiva, the Infinite One. So these are beautiful ideas coming out of this profound discovery of the self of man, the marvelous reality that is there. Vivekananda says, no books, no science, no scriptures can describe the glory of that reality that appears as the self in man. It's a remarkable reality. So in one verse, the Gita has and experiences when it gets a glimpse of that infinite behind the creaturely human individual. Normally we are a creaturely human individual with very limited powers, but we suspect there is something profound within every human being. That suspicion turns into a marvel when they try to understand the truth, and later on it becomes a realization by the great sages. It was in the 18th century, the French philosopher and mystic Pascal, who said, in space, the universe engulfs me and reduces me to a pinpoint. That's what we are. In spatial terms, who are we? A speck of dust within the immensity of the universe. That is our nature. So the first sentence refers to this. In space, the universe engulfs me and reduces me to a pinpoint. But through thought, I understand that universe. That immensity of the universe I am able to understand through my thought. What must be my dimension? Am I merely a speck of dust? No. That speck of dust contains a tremendous splendor. That is the Atman, the subject of this marvel. Ascharyavat pashyati kaschidena. Some people see it as a wonder. Some people hear of it as a wonder. These are the various sections of people. Vadati, some people speak of it as a wonder. But after hearing, very few really understand. What is this wonder? And if you realize it, what a wonderful experience it must be. If this worldly experience is wonderful, million times more wonderful will be that experience. That is the liver which has livered the Indian mind for centuries. After the Upanishads, our people were livered by this discovery. I must know this truth. That's why so many people went on the forests and caves, meditations, just to realize this profound truth. For there is no other technology except that. None of these physical technologies can help there. And so you find rock caves here, there, all over. And in history, you produce a Buddha, a man who really penetrated into this marvel and studied his words. As he realized this immortal truth, he was so full of joy. For 7 days or so, he was walking up and down under that very tree where he realized this truth. He was full of joy. He expresses it as much as he can through words in his discourses. So it is something extraordinary. So this verse 29 is expressing that marvel which Ordinary people also will feel, extraordinary people also will feel. Ascharya.